Started. So my name is Jordan Jones. I'm from Cisco Systems, and I'm here to talk to you about how we're implementing Alfresco, the kinds of use cases that we are deploying Alfresco to help us with. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about our architecture. We tend to look at architecture in the form of problems. We have a business problem that we want to solve in some way. So we look at it in terms of the business, the operations, the systems, and the technology to provide something that is going to fix that problem, and it's also going to give us extensibility, supportability, all the abilities that you might want. Then I'll talk about specifically how we're doing that with what our idea is for content, kind of an overarching goal for content, and then I'll go into the use cases that I mentioned, and then a little bit of a deep dive on one particular use case. So you'll see that agenda here, and that use case we'll do a deep dive on is sales enablement. So watch for that. It's probably the most complex of our systems, and I think it'll be of interest. So the problem statement is basically that our content landscape today is insanely complicated. Now, I don't expect people to be able to read this. I can't even read it. I'm standing right here. But the point is, this is a list of our content systems on the left, and across the top is the different features and functions that we use them for. So you can see there's a lot of them, and there's a high degree of overlap. So that's our problem. We have over 50 content repositories identified, and still counting. Some companies operate different ways. We're a very open company that has pluses and minuses. The pluses are people can get stuff done as quickly as they need to. The minuses are people build things not realizing that they're already there. And that's what's happened with some of these repositories. People have built repositories that are redundant to things that exist because they didn't ask anybody, how would I do X, Y, Z? They just said, I'm going to go build something. We also have a fair number of acquisitions, and to allow acquisitions to continue to be successful, we don't come in and say you have to change all of your processes on day one. We have discussions with them and find places where it might make sense, where they have a process that's broken, and we have something that might work for them to migrate them into those. But some parts of the company will be 8 or 10 years with content repositories that work for them. And that's become a problem in the company, so we're trying to address that. So to see it in a different visual way, here is our systems information exchange view of our business operations systems and technology overview. So we took a look at all the ones on the other side. This is what it looks like and how they're interconnected, and it doesn't need to be as complicated as this. And the problem is we're creating all kinds of silos where in some cases they're connected in one way but not in another, and we can't really get all of the business value that we should be able to get out of our documents in an environment that's as complicated as this. So we want to look at our content strategy. We operate using something called the VSEM. So we have vision, strategy, execution, and then all of our metrics around that. So our vision for content is to have the right information at the right time in the right context. Give people the information that they want. Don't make them wade through information that they don't want, and so forth. So we're also looking at in terms of we want to say, well, what do people do? So in our strategy section, we're saying we want to understand how people work with content, and we thought of it in terms of the verbs of content, as we call it. So we have create content, localize content, publish content, manage content, store content, consume content. Those are kind of the key areas. And then we're also looking at inferring content metadata. So we're looking at the possibility of ingesting all of our content into big data and then being able to say, you never said competitive information in here, but I see that you're mentioning competitors, so I'm going to tag it automatically with competitive information, so that we can deal with the fact that users don't like to tag. Users are humans. Humans are lazy, so users don't tag. So we want to infer that metadata and then provide it. From that inferred metadata and also from the content itself, We want to improve the findability of that content, as we call it. So here we're talking about find content. And then we have something called Network Academy. People might have heard of 1 million users around the world in 140 countries. That's a key part of our focus as well. So I'm not going to go down into the execution, but I will say that the execution layer really talks about how in different parts of our content management space we're going to improve those strategies. We're going to have better ability to create content, to localize it, to publish it, manage it, and so on. And then we, on the bottom, of course, want to have metrics in terms of quality and risk and user experience and so forth. Another way of looking at this is in terms of facets of a content strategy. So we want to understand, in terms of content management, we feel we have too much old content. So when people search in some of our systems, they'll get 10,000 hits, and what they'll notice is 99% of them are more than 3 years old. They're not really relevant. Some of those that are older are showing up higher on the list. So there's some tuning we need to do in our findability, but there's also some things we need to do to archive that data and actually not serve it up if it's no longer valid for those users. As I said before, we want to have a deeper understanding of the content, but we know that users do not tag. So we want to do some of that for them and help them organize their content in an automated way. Going down further, the content sources, I just told you we have more than 50 content management systems. And I should say, it depends on how you count it. We have more than 50 products. In some cases, we have 4 or 5 implementations of one of those products. So we say more than 50, it might be more than 100, might be more than 200, when you actually looked at how many of them are sitting on their own infrastructure and so forth. So the question that we get a lot of times from our users is, where do I put my stuff? I have information that is of this kind, might have a certain information classification in terms of its security. Where do I put that? I want to share it with a customer. I want to share it with a partner vendor. How do I do that, and what's the right place for it? It's a little bit difficult to have that conversation with all of those different systems with all those different capabilities. The next one is content usability. So content is surfaced independent of the processor app. We want essentially, instead of the user having to go and figure out which application to deal with, figure out how to search in that application, maybe it's got its own search interface and so forth, that's a lot of learning to force on the user, especially if they're dealing with multiple of these applications. So we want the content to know who is going to use it. So part of it is profiling the users to say, this is a salesperson, this is a marketing person, this person is in TechDoc or whatever, and surfacing up the content that's going to be more relevant to them because of their user profile. So we're looking at that kind of thing. In terms of search relevancy, people tell us, we've heard many times, I can't find anything. We've also heard on our external website, our customers say, Google is better than your search. Now the fact of the matter is, Google is always going to be better than our search because it has the wisdom of the internet. So it's looking at what everybody on the internet is pointing to when they make that particular tag or that link. We only have the intelligence of our own website, and so there's some limitations there relative to what Google does. Internally, people just say, I can't find it, and so we really need to look at improving the relevancy of our content, understanding synonyms for keywords. And one example that we had was, as you notice, I've got a Mac here. A lot of the people in the company have Macs. If you want to get a new one because yours is old, you go through a process that's called a PC refresh. Until we started to look at the actual search logs, nobody realized that a lot of people with Macs were having trouble because they typed in Mac refresh, and there was no such page. There's a PC refresh page. You had to know that to find it. So we've put in synonyms that help people get to the right content, and we're continuing to look at the search logs to see where people execute searches and then immediately do another search or leave the search page and so forth, and don't click on one of the search things that come up to kind of tune that search. And so the last one here is user experience. People feel the UI is dated. It's not mobile enabled. They want us to surprise and delight them. Some of our content management systems, one of the ones that I inherited, is about 20 years old. The UI was designed at that time, and it looks like it. So ironically, some people don't seem to mind. Some people tell us, why are you changing that? It works for me. And other folks will say, geez, can't we have, it's supposed to be a leading technology company, can't we have something better and more modern? So all these things kind of come together as we look at what we're going to do for our content strategy. Another thing we looked at was what kinds of content repositories are there. So we think of it in terms of traditional content. These are often doc-based content, Microsoft Office. You have some multimedia, and we also have things for tech docs, legal, processes and procedures, HR, engineering, are some of the teams that are creating this. And a lot of it is really Microsoft Office heavy. So very heavy in PowerPoint and Excel and Word in particular. Then we have social and collaboration content, wikis, blogs, posts, communities, and then some vertical collaboration solutions in that space. And finally, we have web content, web and mobile. We kind of think of it in those terms. So obviously some HTML, JavaScript, and then things that are intended to be web consumables. So PDFs created from those Office documents, EPUB and Mobi for reading in mobile readers, and other kinds of mobile content. So we kind of divided it up this way. As we look at it further, we want to look at the end result and use that to deliver better experience. We want it to be simpler and reduce costs. So the first thing we want to do is consolidate. In each of those areas, we want to pull together these disparate systems and try to get towards one or some number fewer than the ones we have, and give people much more comprehensive experience in that one target environment. Secondly, we have been dealing with this content too much in silos. So the social content and the traditional content are not really together. And in social content, somebody might attach a Word document to a post, and now that Word document is in the social environment, it's not in the content management environments, and so somebody looking in the content management environment won't find it. So we want to start to bridge those. So we want to make a data bridge using Alfresco between some of those, and we want to bridge the internet and collaboration, and then we're bridging Alfresco and our web experience management to create cases where documents are created in Alfresco and then published through our web experience management out to the website. So our web content management system has the web collateral, but the original source document and the single source of truth for that content would be in Alfresco. So finally, we want to integrate search and metadata. So over the top of all of this, we're putting universal search. We're putting the metadata environment that I mentioned that's going to use big data to infer metadata. And we're looking at overall information architecture to make sure that we have similar tags available across the different environments and things like that to make it for a more comprehensive environment for what we call findability. So this leads us to our goal, which is a unified architecture for content. In this unified architecture for content, we're really looking at that vision of the right information at the right time for the right people in the right context. So when we talk about the right information, we're talking about content relevancy. Is this content going to be relevant? And when we talk about the right time, is it relevant in the moment as a part of the business process? So here's where I am in my business process, and I did a search, and you gave me this information. Is it relevant to that right time? In terms of the right people, this talks about security, but it's also profile. So you might be able to access multiple different things based on your security level, but we also know what your role is in the company, and that role might have us surface up things that are more relevant to you. And then when we talk about the right context, we're really thinking about mobile and location-based content. So I'll stop there and just say, for our architecture, we're really looking at opening up everything that we're doing in those spaces of collaboration and web and content, and trying to say, how can we unify this with search and metadata to allow users to get to the information they need and not have to understand those three silos as well as the multiple silos below them, and give them one kind of interface. So we're starting to look at a couple of key use cases for Alfresco as part of this environment. I won't talk as much about search and metadata in the rest of this presentation. I'm really just talking about the content management system aspects and kind of drilling down into some of that. So our first use case is relative to engineering and services documentation. So that 20-year-old content management system I mentioned is in-house developed, Apache and Perl. Some people love it, and the problem is it's pretty brittle at this point. And it was designed without records management in mind. It was designed to retain every record, every document, until the end of time. And so far it's done that with a couple of exceptions for divestitures and things like that, where we had a strong business case and a legal requirement to remove documents, but in general, everything's in there forever. So it's an aging system. It does have ISO compliance, and we need to maintain that. And we must improve the self-support, the usability, the security, eDiscovery and records management. I say improve, we should have some. And also the mobility. It's entirely designed with Web 1.0 in mind, and has not been updated since then. I'll just make one comment on self-support. In that system, because it was really designed to be a department level solution and ended up having 50,000 monthly users, it was thought, well, we'll just have IT create the folder. So anytime somebody wants a new folder, they have to make a case. Anytime somebody wants to move a file from one folder to another, they have to create a case for IT to come in and do that. So that level of self-support, or that lack of self-support, creates a lot of challenges. One is when people actually want to do those things, it takes longer than it should. But worse, I think, for the company and in terms of managing our data, is people just ignore it. So they leave files in inappropriate folders. The business units change names, and some of the folders are named after the business units. Nobody cleans that up. So you end up losing the stewardship of the content because nobody's really maintaining it. To change who owns something, to change who has access to it, is problematic. So people open things wide open and say anybody in the company can see XYZ, or anybody in engineering and so forth, because they don't want to have to deal with it when one guy says, I should see that and I can't. That leads them to have to open a case and so forth. So that's our starting problem. So our solution is to configure and customize Alfresco to comply with ISO policies and procedures. We created a live pilot environment and a sandbox environment, allowing people to see what we were developing and be able to do things there. Now the live pilot is actually live data. So we wanted to say to folks, only use this one when you've got an actual document you want to take through its paces. You can use the sandbox for anything that's just going to be a trial and so forth. Because we had some needs for acquisitions that were coming in and didn't have a content management system at all, they had files on people's desktops, we wanted to get started and allow them to come in. So that live pilot environment has continued to be maintained, and it's now in production. We engaged thought leaders in different spaces. So in compliance engineering, in customer data protection, in records management and legal, in information security, engineering and services, to look at those environments and give us guidance. And then we developed using Agile. So every month we have a sprint that has new features based on input from all of these thought leaders. and every month we're getting closer and closer to what we require. That process was challenging initially because we didn't have funding. Later, when I talk about sales enablement, that's where the funding came from. That allowed us to do some of these things that were foundational to the main thing we were initially intending to do. So this took more than a year for us to do this. A lot of that had to do with not really being fully funded and people doing this as kind of a stretch goal as we got started. So my diagrams here are overly simplified, obviously, but this is just the standard Alfresco implementation. We have users from engineering, services, IT, legal, and finance, hitting the Eng dashlet, we call it, and then that stuff goes into the Alfresco database and content server. We have one place where that goes. So the next one is sales enablement that I mentioned a second ago. So the sales enablement team wanted to get the right content to Cisco sellers and to Cisco partner sellers. We support something on the order of 13,000 SKUs. Most of these are not relevant to sellers. There's line cards, there's power supplies. If I'm out there trying to sell a whole network to someone, I don't really care about the power supplies at the moment. That might be something they need, but it's not really driving the sale. What I want to know about is the big iron or the software that's really going to deliver the capabilities that customer wants. So they want us to follow kind of the 80-20 rule. Show us the 20% of products that drive 80% of the revenue. That's where the customers are interested. That's where the sales force is interested. Our previous model had been everything goes on the website, and everything on the website has it's kind of a democracy of content. So everything there has the same relevance in searches and so forth. So if you listed the name of a product that has 1,300 line cards in it, you'd see hits from the product itself and all the line cards and so forth. So we wanted to then pilot Alfresco for content curation. There were a lot of things that we didn't have in place. So this program actually funded a lot of this innovation. So we're also piloting our metadata service for the automated tagging. We had a new search service that was just getting started. It was funded, but this was the pilot environment for that new search service. And then we wanted to do multi-channel publishing. This is the first time we had done that. So all of our publishing before had been to Cisco.com. So this is still there. All that content's available to the world, but it has entitlement. That would be the same entitlement that you would have in the other environments I'm going to mention. And then we also wanted to publish to our Cisco Sales Connect mobile app that we're developing as part of this project. And that is for use by external and internal sellers. And then finally to Salesforce.com for internal sellers. So the idea is that users upload content, they tag it with the relevant metadata, and then they click publish, and then it shows up in all these environments automatically. Now, at some point, we're going to be adding more environments, and that's going to lead us to force the users to choose. They want to publish to all or some, because the business cases as we add those environments are going to change. But at the moment, one button publishes it to all these targets. Now, looking at the diagram, what you have is the marketing, training, and demo teams, because this is actually the standard marketing collateral material, but it's also links to training material that might exist elsewhere on our website, links to demos that appear either on our website or somewhere else in the cloud. So some of that is actually on YouTube. And for the first time, it's going to be gathered together in one place. When you look for a product, you'll see the product collateral, information on training, information on demos that might have been recorded. All that stuff gets put into their sales enablement content workspace dashlet. That's their particular interface for their content, and stored into the same Alfresco database as the engineering content I mentioned before. That environment is linked up to the metadata service, so the metadata that they're choosing through their dashlet is determined by what's in that metadata service. It's going out across the enterprise and using other sources of metadata, aggregating them and in some cases pruning them for use by these users. And then when that content gets published, it goes out to Salesforce.com. It goes out through our web content management system to Cisco.com. The mobile app that we have out here is actually reaching inside the firewall to find mobile search information. And it's also getting the content itself, whoops. It's getting the content itself from the website. And so the website has all those SKUs that I mentioned, has all the content, but because of special metadata tagging and because we've sent from Alfresco a custom sitemap to this mobile search engine, it's then able to say, these are the things that I want, and these are the things I'm going to surface up in this mobile app, and gives people a customized, smaller set of content that they would get if they were on Cisco.com. So this is probably our most complex environment, and I've simplified it. There's a couple of subsystems and so forth that I left out. The idea being, we see this as an infrastructure that's going to allow us to add up this side additional publishing targets, and I've got some of those in some of the later use cases. So another thing that came up was external customer sharing. This one is in production pilot. We're expecting to go live in the next month. Services had a need to share information with customers in an auditable and secure way. And this is for highly confidential and restricted data. And according to the rules that are set out by the customer data protection team. So our idea was to configure and customize Alfresco with workflows starting on the common internal infrastructure, and then perform some aggressive vulnerability testing on what we're going to have outside the firewall, and further scale the external environment by building a web front end, and then provide Splunk-based reporting for performance usage and security audits. So that environment looks like this. The same core Alfresco environment in the middle. They're actually using the same dashlet the engineering team uses, but based on where the content is, they have capabilities to be able to publish. And so they're in the kind of a folder set that allows them to do that. When they set that metadata and go through their approval process for publishing, it goes out to an Alfresco environment outside. And then we have a web front end that looks like the rest of Cisco.com that users can come in and get to that data. The next one, and I realize there's a lot of different environments here. The point, though, is there's only one environment. There's one Alfresco instance inside that we're giving people these different capabilities from. So they have different views into the data. So here, some executives needed a secure and easy way to share information. They wanted to deliver with mobility first. So they might be on the road. They want to use their iPad to get into this content. We have a very open environment for BYOD in Cisco. We do require some security settings that make people's devices trusted devices, PIN code locking, and a couple of other things. But assuming that somebody has a device that's set up like that, they would want to be able to get to it. So we're creating a custom mobile app that we're leveraging from the work we did on the Sales Connect mobile app. And then we're providing secure access on mobile. So we're doing data encryption in flight and on the device. The device must be a trusted device, as I said. And we're requiring login and PIN code access controls. We're not allowing sharing out from that app. So once they get that content in that app, they can see it there. They can annotate it and things like that. But they can't then share it out to Dropbox or email or something like that, because these are considered to be highly confidential and often restricted files. And our idea here is to delight with the presentation, navigation, and annotation features. So this one, again, they're using the same engineering dashlet for the content creators, but they have their own capabilities because of where the content is, and then they're able to publish that content out, and then people with that, I'm just calling it, just named it last night, Cisco Boardroom, and then connecting over VPN through the firewall, they would be able to get into that content that is for those executives only. And another that's come up, and we're in the design process on this one, is an LCMS with external partner content developers. So at first we thought learning content management, we can certainly do that, and we can link up with the learning management system and so forth. And then we got a wrinkle as we started to discuss it further, and that was most of the content development happens from people outside the company who are not going to be given access inside the firewall and so forth. So we needed to surface it up outside the firewall, and we needed the ability, because a lot of this content is sales enablement content, we needed the ability for it to come back in and flow through that sales enablement publishing process and end up in those multiple targets. So right now, their vended environment for LCMS is end of life. Even with what they had older capabilities, and this required multiple publishing workflows. So they would publish it in one place, and they would manually take it from there and copy it somewhere else and publish it again, and things like that. So we want to align that learning team with Alfresco for multi-channel publishing. We want to, I'd say, as we discussed, already available is that they can publish to Cisco.com, Salesforce.com, Sales Connect, and then we really have to develop the deployment to their CDN, and we have to build a custom dashlet in Alfresco, allowing the learning content developers to develop and manage content in the way that makes sense for an LCMS that's different from standard CMS. And then we need to externalize that interface for those external partners and extend the publishing capabilities to allow basically publishing from the external environment back out to other external environments. And we're still kind of figuring that out. So as I said, this is in the design phase. But it looks kind of like this. So people start out here on the LCMS outside the firewall. They create content. It can be brought in by the marketing, training, and demo teams into the internal environment, and then it can be published from there to the other targets. And actually, there should be another one here for our CDN environment. The next one is protecting personally identifiable information while gathering tax data from employees. So HR needs tax data, including PII, such as tax IDs, Social Security numbers, and so forth. And they also need to modernize what has been a paper and postal mail process. So we essentially came in and said we can build a custom dashlet that allows HR to upload a single form and then populate the data for the query request. And then we can have workflows send out individual invitations. So each user who's on their list of people that need to submit this document would get an invitation. When they logged in, they would have a unique login because of logging in and being authenticated as that person. They would then see their document with all the data we already knew pre-populated. So in most cases, something like the tax identifying number, we'd already know that and we'd already deliver that, so they wouldn't have to provide that. In a lot of cases, all they need to do is sign it. But this would allow those users to see just what they should see, and would come back and HR, only the right entitled people in HR could see the documents they should see. So that environment looks like this. Human resources comes in, they work through their PII dashlet, they provide the information on which users, and also what information they know already, what information they need to gather, and a PDF template. Then we populate the templates and send notifications to the users that they have a task to go finish that document and submit it. And the final one is sales enablement for partners. So all the sales enablement stuff that I talked about previously is, with the exception of the LCMS, I guess, is developed and designed by people internally. Or what's happening is they have external partners that are creating this content, and then they're emailing it and you name it, getting it to them, and the internal folks then bring it into Alfresco and publish it through our sales enablement process. That's really not where we want to go. We want to have, whether it's a content development partner, whether it's a Cisco employee who's not part of the typical content development team, we want to enable more collaboration, more content contribution from a wider group of users. Again, some of them are contracted to do this work. Some of them are SEs who have a really good use case document that they want other sellers to be able to see. And so we want to give them a way to do that. So how do we enable participation of external content creators? And how do we support the existing cloud infrastructure for task assignment and content delivery and route that through our Alfresco for sales enablement publishing was our initial problem. So that Alfresco external environment that I talked about that we're using for our customers, we're looking at leveraging that environment, giving people a different view into that environment, and then allowing the Alfresco internal folks to be able to access, tag, and publish that content to then publish it back out to the sales enablement targets. So this formal sharing environment that I mentioned before now includes SE for partners. They send content into this environment. People from the marketing, training, and demo environment can come in and see that data, say, I agree this is important for us to be able to publish, bring it in, and then publish it out through all the other systems. So it's a way that we can do content curation of things produced by the community, and that community initially is going to be people that we're hiring to create content, as well as Cisco employees who've created content and want to propose content. But eventually it could be much wider and much more social content could come through that portal. So I know that I've talked about a number of different capabilities, and the important thing from my point of view to get out of this talk is not that we've done this or that we've done that or that we're planning or we're designing any of these specific solutions. It's that we see Alfresco as a flexible environment on which we can create multiple different business applications, because so much of our business relies on having the right information at the right time. And so much of it involves knowing that that's an approved document, that it's been evaluated by the right people, and also knowing what security classification it has, knowing if I'm allowed to publish it, all of these kinds of things that today are poorly or in a disjointed way managed in all the other systems. So it leads us to what I call the whole enchilada. That's all those systems interacting. Now they're not all in production yet, but that's where we're going. So I'll talk a little bit more about sales enablement and how we got there. So historically at Cisco, we've been messaging our sales force, whether it's internal or external, through various stovepipes. So the business unit has their goals, the marketing team has their goals, the HR team has their goals, and sales has their goals. They're all saying, I want you to prioritize projects that impact sales, but they're looking at it in a bunch of disparate ways, and it's hard for the sales force to deal with that. So they've told us, simplify the experience. And so we looked at it in terms of, what is the problem here? And the problem is that our field and partner teams tell us that they're spending 15 to 25% of their time searching for content so they can have valuable conversations with their customers and partners. And our EVP for sales, Rob Lloyd, said, we need to get rid of the brown sweaters in our closet. So we've got stuff we're not using, let's get rid of it. So that led us to build this Sales Connect mobile app, and that's a screen capture of the mobile app. It's available in the iOS and Android stores, and it allows us to give sales content all in one place. So we have some verbatims from some of our sellers who have been using this app. They feel it's less fragmented, and the second one from the bottom I know is really popular in Cupertino. Because of Sales Connect, we have decided to deploy iPads to our field. So these come from primarily our external sellers, but it's really seen externally and internally as a way that is going to boost the productivity of the sellers, because now they can find content that they couldn't find before because the website had too much data. All right? That's it. Thank you. Any questions? Yes. So the question was, what is our metadata service and auto tagging built on? So that is all kind of in-house. That's not a vended product, but it's using Hadoop and other technologies around Hadoop. Yes.
So in the sales enablement, you mentioned that it's one of the 80/20 rule where 20% of the products that generate 80% of the revenue are shown first. How do you recognize those documents? Is there a metadata that says?
Yes, there is. So the question is, how do we recognize the 20% of products that drive 80% of the revenue? And there is metadata. So the first thing is anything that's coming through our Alfresco environment is treated as special content. And it's getting special metadata that talks about the fact that it's that kind of content and has special tags that no other content in the company uses that are mobile search and the app are keying on to pull in that content and ignore all the other content.
But all the time, assuming that the revenue is attached to the product.
Yes.
So you can go back and change it.
So, and I'm repeating the questions because it's being recorded. So the question is, over time, that's going to go stale, and how do we maintain it over time, I think. And so the first thing is, all of the content we're publishing from Alfresco has a freshness date. It all goes out with a default of 6 months. Users have to manually go in and say, please continue to publish this. And then within the sales and marketing teams, they have the responsibility to evaluate that content, and we're giving them reporting to see what's coming up for expiry and so forth, with the idea that they will let some things expire as they publish new things and so forth. It's a new process, and we've only had this app in production for about 5 months, so it's going to be very interesting next month, I guess. But we're trying to build that into the system, that content will expire, so we won't have things that used to be high-selling products that aren't anymore. Yes?
Are there any patterns or best practices that you're using across the different products?
So the question is, are there any patterns that we're using across all the different applications to make them work better effectively? I would say, I'd have to bring in my developers and architects to really answer that question. But from my perspective, we are continuing to do code reviews, and we're continuing to work with folks on how they're developing. We've had some challenges when we got started where people were hacking the core when they didn't need to and creating problems for each other. So it's an ongoing process. Right now, we're just trying to kind of socialize what code we're building and how and talk about how we should build it, with the goal of doing more with patterns and so forth. Good question. Other questions? Yes.
It's kind of related to the last question that you mentioned some customization with Alfresco, like dashlights and things like that. So how difficult that path was, and did you have to do any upgrades of Alfresco?
So we are this week launching 4.2. So repeat the question, I guess. How difficult was it for us to do those customizations, and did we have to deal with an upgrade? So it hasn't been difficult to do those customizations. It depends on what the complexity is that people are asking for. But in general, working in the environment has not been challenging, because I have a bunch of Java developers, and they understand how to work with it, and they find it to be an open environment to develop to. We're just doing our first major upgrade, going to 4.2 this Friday, and that was challenging for us because in some cases we had done things that were ill-advised, and in other cases files changed that we didn't expect to change, and we had not built into our plans the amount of complexity we'd have in terms of testing all of our environment for going from 4.1 to 4.2. There was more change there than we expected for something that said .1 to .2. I think we've learned from that process first to do better and keep our customizations in a secure area for customizations. And also we're kind of working with Alfresco to see what we can do to for us and for other customers to get better notifications and also to have a patch strategy so that we get only the files that change and not every file. That will help us with upgrades. We're also, I should say, we're also doing some automated testing to allow us to get a better, quicker sense of whether something is broken or not. Other questions? Yes.
First of all, thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Okay.
Much appreciated. My question is related to the metadata search. You just mentioned that you have used Hadoop instead of using Alfresco for metadata. So what was the criteria of using any other big data technology instead of using Alfresco, which provide a metadata search itself?
So the question was, why are we using Hadoop instead of Alfresco native metadata? And I think that maybe I didn't explain it really well. Our metadata service that is using Hadoop doesn't mean we're not using Alfresco metadata. We still have all the Alfresco metadata, and we've extended it with our own metadata. Where we're using Hadoop is we're essentially saying, here's a file that's in a certain process in its life cycle. Now we want to understand it better in ways that maybe the users didn't tag. And so we send it into that Hadoop environment, we process it, and then we suggest some machine tags that go in their own field for machine tags. So it's just a way of providing additional tagging that maybe the user didn't do or that didn't happen in the content lifecycle. Yeah. Another question.
While doing search and get the data, have you ever ran into processing issues? Like how much time it takes to process the data and bring back the results?
So the question is, have we run into performance issues with how long it takes to process the search queries? You're talking specifically about the search queries, or are you talking about search indexing?
Search index and query, like
Okay.
when user adds new data to the content, like and then
Yeah.
somebody tries to search, like how fast.
So we don't see a problem with performance of the search queries themselves. We don't see a problem with indexing of content that's being added manually by users. Where we do see some performance bottlenecks are when we make changes to our structure and then we need to re-index everything. And we're finding that we feel that takes an inordinate amount of time. We're discussing that with Alfresco. And then also we're looking at how we do search at an enterprise level. So we're gonna have the Alfresco native search, but we're also gonna have an enterprise search that's gonna be indexing that, and we need to understand the impact of that on our environment, so that somebody who comes just to search.cisco.com internally would see this data along with all the other data from other systems and the website and so forth. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.